Okay, so picture this. You book a last minute cruise at a discounted fare, travel, fly, drive, whatever, to get all the way to the cruise port, even board the cruise ship, only to be told you don't have a room and you can't sail. Sound crazy? Well, believe it or not, it can happen. Yes, it's rare, but it can happen.
And it actually happened this week to a woman who was trying to sail on the Carnival Venezia. She got all the way to the cruise port, even got on the cruise ship, was told to wait until her stateroom was assigned. She waited, only to be told, sorry, we don't have a room for you. Now kindly please get off the ship. And what you see here is Carnival's official response explaining the situation.
What a lot of people don't realize is that, like airlines, cruise lines also overbook their sailings because they want to make sure that they're going to sail at capacity, because of course there are no-shows, last-minute cancellations, things like that. Exceptionally rare, but sometimes their calculations and their software programs are wrong. Everybody shows up, meaning you don't have a stateroom.
So when you're booking a cruise, if you don't want to run this risk, sure not to book a TBA stateroom. Now these again are usually really discounted rooms, and so that's the trade-off. Now, I've actually personally booked a TBA stateroom before, and my experience was kind of similar to hers. Now, luckily I got on the ship, but here's what happened in my case. I booked a last-minute casino offer, so it was a free sailing, so my stateroom was not immediately assigned. I flew to Port of New Orleans to board the ship there. My luggage tag actually had stateroom TBA on it. So this is the point where it started to get a little nerve-wracking. I got all the way to the cruise terminal. Normally I check my luggage with the porter, but I couldn't do that because I didn't have a stateroom. So they directed me to guest services at the cruise terminal. I went to guest services. We had to wait kind of a while, and I really did start to get nervous, thinking, oh my gosh, are we going to get a stateroom? We waited. Finally, they assigned us a stateroom. I had to actually write on a Sharpie the stateroom number on my luggage tag, and then we could drop it with the porter and board the ship. And I can tell what happened is that our stateroom was a last minute cancellation, because when staterooms opened, we went to our room, got the little envelope with the stateroom keys inside, or the sail and sign cards is what Carnival calls it. They actually had other people's names on them. We had to go down to guest services, give them those sail and sign cards where they printed ours actually for us, and we were good to go. So that was a little nerve-wracking. And again, in my case, luckily I was able to get on the ship. We had a great time, but just make sure you know this little cautionary tale of what happened to this woman, because that is a risk with a TBA stateroom. And knowing what I know now, I probably wouldn't take that risk again. Maybe not, I'm not sure. Depends on how badly I want to go on the sailing, because in this case, I had paid for a flight, and a flight from where I live to New Orleans is actually not a cheap one. And I actually had to spend the night overnight too. So I was down airfare for myself and my daughter, a hotel cost, and I would have been really upset if I would have had to scramble, either change my flight or book a new flight home and not get to go on my sailing. So a TBA is not that big of a risk if you live within driving distance to the cruise port. And in this particular story, that woman was a couple of hours from her cruise port. So she was able to get in her car and drive back home without having to deal with the mess of air travel. But if you have a long travel distance to get to a cruise port, it's just something to really weigh as you decide whether or not it's worth risking a TBA stateroom.